Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Not That Bad, a movie podcast, a show where we take movies people don't like and we tell you why they're not that bad. This is going to be a really fun episode today, but first let's get through our introductions. My name is Connor, aka the Flute from Bandcamp.
As we have a returning guest, Mr. Gabe himself from Flopbusters, or as he shall be known in this episode, Other Gabe.
Other
How does it
Gabe.
feel?
Yes, it feels. I like it. I like Other Gabe.
Okay.
It's, Gabriel Tornero from Flopbuster and the headliner of film podcast on the show today. We've had you on, covered Battle Los Angeles last time. Today, covering your pick, American Pie 2. First off, how you doing today? And tell us what made you pick this movie for the show.
I'm doing good. Just doing some practice for our next week, I guess, because we're not recording this week, so next week. But other than that, I picked this movie because I love the American Pie franchise. I love sex comedies. I think that they're a forgotten genre, obviously because of reasons being the climate nowadays. But also because I think this one, a case could be made that this one is funnier than the first one. And so that's why I wanted to pick this one. It doesn't deserve its. When I picked it was 3.8 on Letterboxd. It has climbed up, or 2.8. It's climbed up to 2.9 on Letterboxd. So I there's a case to be made that it's the better one.
This will be really interesting because any movie that we cover on here, even though our influence is not strong, we do always have the potential to push for a not that bad bump to get a movie above a 3. We have a unique opportunity to do that in this episode. For now, as our guest said, though, this movie does have a 2.9 on Letterboxd, released in 2001, directed by J.B. Rogers, and the second after one of the most beloved sex comedies of all time, in a weird way. It's like you said, sort of like a black sheep genre, but
I'm gonna
American
say,
Pie is very well remembered.
Can I clarify something? Okay, the original is beliked. I don't know if beloved.
I guess beliked is a good. Is that joining our dictionary, our not that bad dictionary?
Beliked.
You're not wrong. I mean, these movies, we kind of very briefly touched on it in our episode with Tony, who also, your co-host, brought us a sex comedy in The Girl Next Door. These movies are not really looked back upon very fondly.
No.
None of them really are. They're kind of a stain in a weird way. It's kind of sad for some people, such as yourself, who are big fans of them. I've always said, like, romantic movies, I don't know if you can call this a romance movie, but like sex comedies are not really in my wheelhouse. I had seen the original American Pie. I had not seen The Girl Next Door, and I had seen American Pie 2, but had zero memory of it. So it was interesting diving back in, feeling like I was watching it for the first time. And I'm excited to get into this discussion on it here. But I do want to talk about my co-host history, because you come from a unique perspective with this one. Not having, well, I'll let you say.
Not having seen the first one, and I still haven't seen the first one because I don't get paid enough to watch multiple American Pie movies for this program of ours. Yeah, look, American Pie, we got to talk about it. We have to talk sort of about the awkward legacy that's there. You already touched on it, Other Gabe, that because of the current climate we find ourselves in, these movies are dicey. And I don't know if that goes for the sex comedy genre as a whole. I think you can, I don't want sex eliminated from movies at all. And I want to make sure that we don't give the impression that that's what we're calling for. I don't want the Hays Code to come back.
Right.
But when your cast is led by these guys, these young dudes who range from really stupid to impossibly stupid, it just, there is sort of a minefield that's out there for you as both, a viewer and as the people who are making the movie. And we'll talk about how this movie specifically, how it navigates that. But that's the reason I always stayed away from American Pie. It's the movie where Jason Biggs fucks a pie. It's the movie where Shannon Elizabeth gets sort of like scammed into starring in some online porno. But that's my relationship with this franchise. This is the only time I've seen an American Pie movie. Will I actually go and watch the others? That's something I can get into later. But I think we've properly set the stage. I think we can pull back the curtains and really launch into the show here. So, as the person who brought us American Pie 2, Mr. Gabe, first explain yourself, and second, no, please, like, tell us. I think I want to hear, what is that thing that always brings you back to this franchise, and what maybe elevates this movie in particular.
Well, I think what brings me back to the franchise is that when the first one got released, I was in high school, and now that one I couldn't really, I knew about high school and I knew about sex and all that stuff, but because I went to like an all boy Catholic high school, like I didn't have the same experiences as these guys did, right? So I couldn't really get behind like prom and trying to have dates. So when the second one came out, they're going to college. This is the first year out of college. In 2001, when this movie came out, I had graduated from high school. So like over the course of the years, I think this is like the most, like, I would say like I'm a late millennial because I was born in 83. So these movies like literally like paralleled, even with like Reunion and Wedding and all this stuff. It's like every stage of my life has been paralleled by American Pie movie. So high school, college, getting married, all this other stuff. So that's why I really always gravitate towards this franchise where I'm watching it, and I watch like 1 through 4. I want to say like maybe twice to 3 times a year. Like they're very, very comfort movies for me. Just because I could see myself growing up with these kids. They're from Michigan, so they're Midwesterners, So I'm like, all right, these are the type of kids I would be friends with. Maybe not Stifler, because maybe I'm the Stifler of my friends group.
Oh man,
really outing yourself there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, there's something very comforting about these movies, which I just gravitate and just go towards every single time. Like when I'm bored and I don't know what to watch and I'm tired of seeing everything, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to throw on American Pie. Doesn't matter which one. The main series, because we had, me and Tony on Flopbuster, we did have an American Pie like podcast. That's how our whole podcast started, was that. And I watched the Bandcamp editions, like the straight to video ones, which I'd never recommend. Those are terrible to see. Like if you think these are bad and raunchy, the other ones are like 10 times worse. But the original main franchise, and so like I'm hoping that I get a like American Pie like senior citizen edition. Like I want to see this friends group back in a sense. But like there's no other, like once you do Reunion, like once you go to your high school reunion when you're in your like late 30s, early 40s, whatever, there's like no other milestone to hit besides. So I don't know how they could bring it back, but regardless, they're a comfort movie for me. I absolutely adore them.
Well, I got to ask you, getting into American Pie 2, this series is interesting because, like you said, it sort of takes like a National Lampoon's kind of route, where it kind of starts going to theaters. A lot of people are going to watch them. People are enjoying them. They're laughing at them. But then eventually we do see that steep drop off, and it goes the Universal route, that Universal directed DVD. Nobody watches them. Pick it up for a bargain bin price of like 50 cents back in the day.
Right.
And none of the actors coming back, right?
None of the actors coming back. Even like, it even went the route of trying to find actors who reminded you of the actors from the original bit of movies, even though there was supposed to be no connection. There's a lot of things that are very weird about it.
Well, they're very connected because there's always a Stifler. It's either Stifler's cousin or Stifler's like brother. Like the first two were like Stifler's brother. That was like Stifler's cousin. Jim's dad makes an appearance in various of these one-offs. So like they try to connect them, but it's just a very bad way.
It's the classic Teen Wolf to Teen Wolf 2 syndrome, right? You can't get Michael J. Fox back. So cast Patrick Bateman, Jason Bateman, who of course he went on to, have a really interesting career of his own. And that's the only reason to ever go back and rewatch Teen Wolf 2. But I'm guessing that these American Pie sequels aren't, they're not the breeding ground for the next generation of stars. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know of anybody who broke out from them.
No, nobody broke out, and it's more also like a dead ground for some stars. Like Shooter McGavin is
Yeah,
always in one of these.
yeah. Christopher
So
McDonald's always there.
right.
And yeah, it's one of those that like I think that and I hate to toot my own horn here, but toot because like the National Lampoon movies are the ones that I think are like the closest comparison, where
They
you
are.
had this start of like this was like a not necessarily a star making vehicle, but you had people like Johnny Galecki would go on to be in The Big Bang Theory, hugely successful show. Whether that's funny or not, that's up for debate, but hugely successful program. Lots of people who would come out of the National Lampoon franchise or come into it at a point in their careers where it really benefited them. Until you got to later movies like Christmas Vacation 2, which was God, like it basically exactly what you described, but with a different label on it. So it's very weird. Van Wilder also went that route after the first movie.
The
It's
Rise of Taj, which listen,
yeah.
I own Rise of Taj. Just gonna throw that one out there. All right. They had the dude Kumar from Harold and Kumar, Ken Pell,
Oh, Cal. Yeah,
Cal
yeah,
Pell,
yeah,
Calpen.
Cal Penn, sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
I
Former
absolutely love
Obama
that movie.
advisor Calpen.
Yeah,
As
former
he's
Obama
officially known.
advisor. That's a
And
weird
it
part.
also had what's her face from The Walking Dead, the one that married Glenn, Maggie.
Lauren Cohen.
That's right. Yeah.
All right,
Beautiful Lauren Cohen. Let's really
absolutely.
put some respect on her name.
So Rise of Taj was a pretty bad sequel to Van Wilder, but it gave us those two actors there.
It did. It did. Well. Speaking of sequels, this is one that came before we had that big fall and drop off of the
Right.
franchise. It's one that's not looked upon super favorably, but I do want to ask you, what's something that you can take away from this movie and say like this is a positive that I have, not even comparing it to the other movies, just something that you really like about this one.
I like how Jim, who's played by Jason Biggs, I like how he found his girl, like in with Michelle. Like he had a bond with her. Like he felt at the end of the first movie, like he wakes up in bed with an inflatable dinosaur, and he's like, "I was used. Like I've been used," and like he's all excited that he was used, right? And then in this movie, he's like goes up to her, he's like, "Hey, why'd you leave me? Like, did I do something wrong?" And he tries to find his way to like be that perfect sexual partner, I guess, for Nadia when she comes back.
Right. Yeah.
But he ends
That's
up
the
like,
whole plot of this movie.
Yeah,
That is
that's really the
actually-
whole plot.
Right.
Yeah.
If I had seen these when I was in high school, I would have identified, as sad as that would be, I would have identified with somebody like Jason Biggs, and I would have gotten really endeared to these performances, right? Is that something that really drives the appeal for these movies for you, Gabe? Is the performances behind the characters?
I do, because I feel like each one of these characters embodies what you would see growing up in high school, right? You have Finch, who's like out of this world, and he looks like he's like fancy and like international type of guy. You have your jock with Oz, and then you have I forget his name. I always forget his name because I really don't care about him, which is Kevin.
Kevin, the kid
Is
from
he the
Rookie of the
guy
Year.
who is on and off with Tara Reid?
Yes.
Fucking hated that little weasel, man.
Really? Oh
holy
man.
shit.
I just want to throw this in here real quick. He's in the good section for me. This is a kid from Rookie of the Year. I love Rookie of the Year. And I kept seeing, like in my own head, this is a follow up to Rookie of the Year, and it's the same guy.
It could be.
He's just been moved to another area. This is Henry Bogardner from Rookie of the Year, grown up and getting in these situations. But man, I hate to hear that you guys didn't like him too much.
No, it's
I
not
hate
that
to
I
hear
don't
that
like
you
him.
like Rookie of the Year, so I guess
Oh,
we're even.
get on! Oh, we're gonna have a fight now.
Oh no,
We're gonna have a fight now.
I'm sorry there, Gabe there, but there's it's 2-1 on Rookie of the
Yeah,
Year.
Rookie of the
All
Year
right,
kicks
all right.
ass,
I'm
man.
outnumbered, and I will retreat in
No,
defense
but
here.
you know what I didn't like about Kevin, and it's not that I don't like him as like his character or whatever. It's just that the way that they grew that relationship with Tara Reid, with Vicky. It's like I don't want an on and off, on again, off again type of relationship. Like they were so crucial in the first movie, to where the point when they got to the second one, they just felt like strangers, and I didn't feel like they had that connection. And it's not like I hated the actor or the actor. It was just like that relationship that they built and that bond from the first one didn't transfer over to the second one. So that's what I mostly hated about that.
Tara Reid felt like she was dragged onto set and held at gunpoint for many of her scenes.
I feel like she feels that way in almost everything.
Hey, now I'm not here to jump on a bandwagon and go off on Tara Reid. I'm seriously not talking about her acting. I learned after the fact that no, she did not want to come back for this sequel. She did not enjoy reprising her role, and money talks, right? But I do see a lack of enthusiasm from her, right. And I guess that's sort of infecting the actor playing Kevin. Your guys' favorite actor, I guess he is.
You know what? She was also the it girl in the early 2000s because of the American Pie. Her stardom got high, and she was hot in the early 2000s. And then, so I'm assuming that's why she also didn't want to do it. Plus, her role wasn't. I mean, she was the girlfriend in the first movie. I mean, she didn't play like a huge part, but I don't know. Like you're right. She didn't seem like she was that into it.
But while we're talking about the cast, if I can just jump in, because I really can't let this not be said. This is something I have to talk about here in this section because I cannot believe how stacked this cast was. There is a revolving door of actors who I thought would never ever set foot on an American Pie set, and they're just showing up for scenes here and there. Like Academy Award winner Casey Affleck, I didn't know what he was doing before his brother started casting him in movies, other than one part in Good Will Hunting, but he just shows up for a scene. I mean, he must have been a character in the first movie, right?
He was. He was also Kevin's brother, but all he was is like one scene. It was a phone call. I was like, hey, how do I pleasure my girlfriend? And he's like, oh, you gotta go read this book. That was it. That was all he did in the first movie. Second movie, again, all he did was like, oh yeah, you guys gotta rent the beach house, and that's what me and my friends did, and that was it. Like all he was like phone calls.
And then you have Natasha Lyonne, and she's gone on to have quite the career. I mean, I guess she reunited with Jason Biggs for Orange is the New Black, and now she's in Poker Face. And at this time, she was starring in like some really, really acclaimed indie films that have become cult classics. And she doesn't have a huge part here, but again, it's just one of those times. Like she shows up, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? It's like when we talked about Judge Dredd last time, and fucking Max von Sydow shows up. Like he got lost on his way to the Ingmar Bergman set, and he's like here in this movie. It's not as egregious as that because I think the cast actually blends together really well. But yeah, I guess I want to toss that back to you guys. I mean, is there anybody that you're surprised is in this?
I don't know about surprised, honestly. Even Natasha, like around this time, like a few years after this, she was in Blade Trinity. So like I knew she wasn't like, she didn't have pick of the litter back then.
Like I said, money talks.
Right, money talks. So I really don't think. I mean, Casey Affleck. I remember looking at him on screen and being like, who's that guy? And then just moving on and just being like, oh well, I recognize him, but I don't really. And then you sent me a text and was like, what is Casey Affleck doing in this? And I was like, that's who that motherfucker. Okay, I know him. And it didn't register. But I think one thing that I like about this movie is that like I expect a lot of the cast to be there and they deliver what I expect from them, which is what endeared me to this movie and the cast so much. So I don't know about me with like a surprising nature. I don't know if you have anything other, Gabe, that you wanted to highlight. I imagine it would be hard of a surprising cast for you.
If you grew up with these movies, I mean, is this where most of these actors from?
Absolutely. Like this is where this is like ground zero for most of these actors like that I grew up watching. So like whenever Jason Biggs comes on, I'm like, oh, American Pie. It's sort of like the same role he did in like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back when they're like, oh, you're the pie fucker, and he's like, yeah, like, but like Allison Hannigan, right? I always thought she was really, like, I thought she was pretty, and even for like a band geek, I like thought she was pretty. But then when she did like How I Met Your Mother, which I think is a hilarious show, like
fantastic show,
killed it. So like I'm always happy when these guys are actually go on and move on to bigger things.
Yeah, no, I just want to say you mentioned Allison Hannigan, and it's something I wanted to devote some time to here because in addition to being one of the kids who grew up with a ginormous crush on her, from everything from Buffy to How I Met Your
Right.
Mother to this, but man, just like her character, in my opinion, is the best of all of them in the American Pie movies. I love her so much. She's so endearing and fun and hilarious, like effortlessly funny. And I don't think she gets enough appreciation for how funny she is across like American Pie. And like you said, How I Met Your Mother was a hilarious show. It was so funny. So yeah, I really wanted to make sure that we highlighted Allison in this movie because she shined in the first one. I mean, everybody knows the line about what happened at band camp. I don't know if Gabe's heard that or not.
I've
But
I've been around. I'm familiar.
yeah,
You know,
there was a reason I called myself the flute from band camp at the beginning of this episode. Yeah, she just kills it, and I want to ask Gabe, not other Gabe, but Gabe here, because I know that she's something seemingly that you appreciated about this as well. Is that true as a first time American Pie viewer?
dude, I love Allison Hannigan. I mean, ever since Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she's got it all. I'm quite surprised in retrospect that she didn't have an even bigger career, and she had a big career.
Yeah.
I mean, she starred not one but two iconic television shows, and she's one of the main characters really in an iconic film franchise. But even then, I think she could have done a lot more. But seeing her in this movie was just immediately hell yes, she's in this movie. I knew she would be in this movie, but just her showing up brought back a lot of memories. She's like the only actor I'm personally nostalgic for, I guess you could say, because I did
Yeah.
grow up watching those shows. I think she brings the same like really cute but super neurotic. You know, she's kind of like she's kind of reverse engineering the manic pixie dream girl, and she's actually cranking up the manic part and really kind of like dialing down the pixie, because anybody else would be super off-putting in this role, saying some of the things that she's given to say and doing some of the things
Yeah.
that she's asked to do. I mean, you can make the argument that she's one of the more inappropriate characters. And if this movie came out, we'd probably have a conversation about the ethics of shoving a trumpet up somebody's ass. You know?
And
Right.
then watching the silhouette of somebody playing it,
Yeah,
which
and I read that there was a deleted scene where we would get to see that unfortunate trumpet player get some herpes-like syndrome the next day.
God. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Oh,
Some
man.
scenes are
It's the gift that
deleted
keeps
for
on giving.
Yeah, that's
So big pro for me that Allison Hannigan is in these movies, and her relationship with Jason Biggs. If this movie has a heart, it has to be that. It has to be him learning to look beyond just looks and breast size. He's actually looking past those qualities to appreciate the person underneath. And of course, I didn't think he was trading down, going from Shannon Elizabeth to Allison Hannigan. I think I speak for all of us. She's a girl material. I mean, she was probably the crush for me, you know, in that period of television. Second, maybe to only Pam from The Office, but yeah, she's the big highlight.
Oh, for sure. I like redheads, so like immediately when I saw her, I was like, yeah, that's like right up my alley.
well, she's also got that like she plays the perfect like the cute geek character. Like she does it so perfectly. It's like she made the mold for that role, and then she just smashed it to pieces so that nobody could ever do it as well again. Because I can't think of a more endearing geek character in any movie that I've seen, more so than Allison Hannigan in these movies. She's just perfect, and I would agree with you. I think some people would think we're crazy for saying he's not trading down, but I think for me it's an easy. I would say he
No question.
upgraded,
I mean,
honestly.
I'm glad that Jason Biggs came around to it, but most of the movie, I just want to slap him upside the head because he's
Right.
so obsessed with Shannon Elizabeth. I mean, we're talking all about the characters, and that's really great. I mean, there are characters that we haven't even touched on, like Stifler,
Like the
probably.
Shermanator.
like the Shermanator. God damn it, that kid. That you know, I know
I
that
love
kid
him.
from fucking Larry Clark movies. You know, like really off-putting. Like totally, he always plays sexual miscreant. So I never feel safe when he's on screen.
See,
Like
it's
I,
funny. I
Who, the
know him from
Shermanator?
yeah, the Shermanator. I know him from a move from an awful movie that I love called Ready to Rumble. I was like, oh, this is the dude from Ready to Rumble, and everybody else is like, no, that's Sherman from American Pie, you idiot.
See, I knew him from another sex comedy, can't
yeah,
hardly
can't
wait,
hardly wait.
where he's just
That's
going
right.
around the entire movie stealing things in the background.
It can't hardly wait. That's I'm not going to call it the good American Pie, but can I call it the thinking man's American
The
Pie?
thinking
Perhaps.
man's American Pie, sure, sure.
Okay, we'll
I
roll with
mean,
that.
we'll roll with it, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
and then but I just also have to highlight Eugene Levy as the dad. I think he is something
yeah,
that stands out to everybody as absolutely one of the highlights. I mean,
I
you
would
get it like a
say,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
sorry, go
just
ahead.
no, just that, man. I mean, I don't have anything else to say. Like everything this guy does works for me in this movie, and that goes for the rest of his career. It's just great to see a pro like him in this cast.
Oh, absolutely. I think for me, Jim's dad is I would say he's one of the greatest movie dads. Like based
oh
on
yeah,
this entire arc from the first American Pie all the way to American Reunion, he just plays like the most perfect father, like the father that you wish you would have. Like when he sits down and talks to Jason about after he fucks the pie, and he's like, well, we'll just tell your mom we ate it all, to like this movie where he's
oh my
taking
god.
Jim to the ER because he's like,
Get
because
his
he glued
hand
Because he glued
unglued
himself.
from
his
his dick.
yeah, he
Right. And then
glued his hand to his
he's
dick.
like, doctor, come on. He's like, it's gonna be my son's first time with Nadia. Like, come on, give him something. Like he is going after and he's looking out for his son and he gives some like great life advice to him. Like he's like a great dad.
Yes, I did want to ask you guys about something, and I'm going to throw it to you first here, other Gabe, once I get done with this. But we leave this movie at a kind of an interesting place. They had to kind of reel us in at the end with more of the American Pie humor when Stifler's mom shows up. But just before that,
Jennifer Coolidge,
Jennifer
another
Coolidge,
face
another
was not
awesome
expecting
person
to
in these
see.
movies. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to
another
everybody else, it's like she's probably Jennifer Coolidge probably is the mom from American Pie, but for me,
most yeah.
she's the always confused lady
Yes.
from White Lotus. So again, just another thing of like, my God, you're in this movie.
My
Okay,
God, you look like the 4th of July. No, but no, honestly, like seeing her come back as Stifler's mom, like that's what most people know her as, Stifler's mom. I get that. They had to give us an American Pie ending, but just before that, we get this like for me, what for me is a very endearing scene during like the final moments of this party, where everybody sort of realizes the person that they are becoming after graduating from high school, and that they sort of get to this point where everybody's at their own place of maturity. Where the Rookie of the Year kid comes to terms with the fact that his relationship that he thought was so important and so perfect to him is not it's not that anymore, and he has to come to terms that this is his friend now, and he's either going to lose her forever and not have her at all, or he's going to come to terms with the fact that they're not getting back together. And of course, Jason Biggs, he finally gets with Michelle. Everybody wanted it since the first movie, and it finally happens. What's Oz? Oz's girlfriend comes from was it France? She comes back
France,
to this
from
party,
Paris, yeah.
and they're together. They finally realize that his anxiety about her being gone is totally finished now, and Stifler's still Stifler. But
Stifler.
but the Shermanator gets Nadia, which is real cool. But there's that nice moment of like everybody kind of looking at each other at the party and just being like, yeah, you know what? Like our lives are moving on, and this is what life is now. I want to ask you if that's something that you clocked in this movie, if it's something that you like. I know the relationship with Kevin and his girlfriend are not too great, but what do you think about that?
No, I think you're dead on. I think that's what makes the movie endearing is that ending is, where you know that you're in different phases than your friends, but that's okay because you're gonna be, either you're gonna still be friends or you guys are just gonna grow apart. And I think that when they're looking at each other, they know that okay, we're growing differently, but we're still gonna be friends. We're gonna stay friends. because we've had these experiences in our lives that we've been together and want to stay friends. It reminds me of a lot of, I don't know about you guys, but I got friends that I've been friends with like 20 years,
Yeah.
from high school still, so what, 30 years now, 25 years? I don't know. I forget how old I am, how far away high school was for me now. But I still have friends from high school and, and friends that I made in my 20s. And it's like, they're lifelong friends. And yeah, we don't talk as much anymore because of the way life works. But I know that if I call them or, more, I don't call because I'll just text now. But if I text them, I know they're going to respond. And if I'd be like, hey, man, can you meet up? Like, and I feel like this group of friends was looking at each other and were like, yes, that's what's going to end up happening with us. We're going to be apart. We're going, we're way at college now. We're going to be apart. We're going to grow apart, but we can always come back together at any time and still kick it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're bonded together, and that's something that really resonates with me as somebody who does have a lot of those long-term friends. I got one that I know is listening to the show right now, so I hope that she gets a pop out of it. I don't want to say her name. I don't want anybody to go bother her if this ever pops off or anything. But no, like it's something that resonates with all of us in a way, and I'm curious if our Gabe, as a first-time viewer of this franchise, did you clock this moment at all in your viewing? Is it something that you enjoyed? Is it something that you didn't really resonate with? What
Dude, I'm a big
what say you?
softie. I'm a big
Yeah.
softie. I mean, that's something that gets me through a lot of movies that are lacking in maybe other areas that you would hope a film could excel at, right? Maybe the writing isn't sharp, or maybe the performances aren't the most multidimensional, right?
Yeah.
But that feeling of camaraderie is something that I hold dear just in real life. I mean, I made a big move from Houston to LA, and while I'm really grateful to have that opportunity, I'm thinking about those friendships all the time. So
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I'm just getting to be like weak for this stuff, but I
Yeah.
was moved by American Pie too. Even though I don't think I want to be friends with any of these people, there are some people who I think should be on a list somewhere. Uh, you know, I do
Oh
think of
man.
all of my own memories. I think of my own friends and the time that I've done dumb shit, and they've helped me through that. So the fact that this movie can get to that part right in here, no, that's a testament to the fact that they're onto something. I mean, a movie like this doesn't get huge on accident, and it's not just the sexual nature of it. I think it is really about friendship at the end of the day. Fast and the Furious, that's about family. American Pie, it's
Family.
about friendship.
About family. No, I agree with you. I think it's about it's funny because you also kind of see the point that that other Gabe here named when he was talking about why he loves these so much, is because even as somebody who did not grow up with these movies, I saw American Pie when I was pretty young. Probably shouldn't have been watching it, but I saw American Pie 2 around that same time. But even like now, I'm a little older than graduated from college age at this point, but not too much older. And I'm at that point where like I can relate to a lot of this doing it.
It's the reason why they're endearing. It's because there is a soft portion of these movies. It's not a lot about sex. I mean, yeah, you have that whole lesbian scene like right in the middle of it, right? Where they're
Yes.
paying, they're like, oh,
Yeah, look,
it's
we have to
lesbians.
talk about this stuff, right? I mean, that's
Are
we
we
have.
now? Are we talking about it here, or are we talking about it once we start talking about negatives? I don't know where
I
that's
don't
going
want
to
to.
fall for
No, I
you.
mean, look, like let me turn the question around, right? Because technically I'm a co-host, so I have the authority to do that. I get to ask questions too,
Who gave you the authority? I'm just kidding.
Connor. My name is somewhere on that website.
I
Go
respect
check it
your
out.
authority. I
Not that
respect
bad
your authority. Yeah,
pod.com.
not that
Okay.
bad bot. Nah, look at you. Not that bad pod.com. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the humor, and let's see if we can. This will probably be a good segue into the negative, because surely everything hasn't aged well. But what is it about this movie's sense of humor? We've talked so much about the characters.
I think it's humor, like pre-internet humor, and well, not pre-internet, but early internet humor that nowadays, obviously, everything is so open and talked about, where it is now stigmatized. But back then, it just wasn't. Just nobody talked about it. So it's like when you first hear about it, you're hearing it from this movie, and so I know it's bad, and I know you can't do this movie anymore, but it's like a bygone era. So it's like when Tony visits movies from like the 30s and 40s that he loves so much. It's like, it's one of these movies you just go back and just rewatch,
Wow. Okay. Let's unpack that there as safely as possible. It's like I'm wearing like a hazmat suit or something. Let's like divide this movie into two sections, because to me the humor will either land or fall flat depending on is the movie indulging this kind of behavior, this kind of like the fetishization, voyeurism, all of that. Is it indulging it, or is it punishing these characters for it? When these characters are getting punished, the humor really works for me. And it's not funny because we're watching two chicks make out, at least not to me. It's funny because they turn around back on these doofuses.
Yeah.
Right. That's the funny aspect of it, right? When it's like, all right, we'll go tit for tat, right? And then she's like, I kiss her, you guys kiss. That's the funny part. But also, and again, it's like you said, it's a minefield, right? Because nowadays you can't even do that, right? Because it's homophobia, right? Oh, you got two guys gonna kiss, but they're making faces like they don't want to. Like, so that's still at the same time, it's still, you can't really talk about it in that sense.
You can
That's
talk
what.
about it.
See, but that's the thing. Like this movie, in a weird way, is exactly what you described as a minefield. Because it's funny. Some of the humor does work for the reason that you can't do it anymore. Like some of it, like you laugh, you kind of do like the oh I can't, oh shit, like I can't believe they did that. Oh man, because you watch it with modern sensibilities. It's something that a lot of people do when they watch movies, and they need to, because if they don't, they're gonna go into a modern romantic comedy movie and expect to see shit like this. It's just not going to happen anymore. But there is a lot that does not age well, and there's even scenes that do both. Like you kind of alluded to, like there are scenes that can make you laugh and be funny and have funny situations, but have things that really just don't age very well. And that's where the minefield starts to begin. That's where you really got to be careful where you step on movies like this. And that's not because fear of getting canceled. It's just because things have become different.
Now,
People
there are
move
some
forward.
jokes in here that I will, timeless is kind of a funny word, but some jokes, just do have this more universal appeal.
Yeah.
The very first joke I think really works. Jason Biggs is trying to get it on, and his dad walks in, then his mom walks in, then the girl's parents walk in.
Yeah.
It's that great. It plays on a lot of rules of comedy that really do hold up. Escalation, rule of threes. I think Jason Biggs is. I think this is why he gets cast in these roles, is because he's really good playing up, humiliation. And that's a situation where I feel like nobody's being made fun of, nobody's being fetishized. I don't feel weird watching it. It's just one of those funny jokes, parents
Right.
walking in on us. Then you go to jokes where I don't know how I feel about it, like when Stifler gets pissed on by Commander Sulu. Like, here's one of the things about this movie, the conundrum of this movie. I mean, that joke is funny, but the way they get to that joke has no logic. Because why, if you're any sort of civil person, would you take a piss off of a balcony? Just go to the ground floor, sir, and like do it in the bushes.
Oh man. I mean,
Because it's John's show.
yeah, that's John Cho. I mean, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.
It's because so these movies have sometimes they have a recurrent joke. So in the first movie, if you haven't seen it, Stifler's at a party and he drinks a cup full of semen. Kevin and Vicky had just been done. Vicky gave him a blowjob, and then he, whatever in the cup, and then Stifler goes in with a girl, and he's like, "Here, have a drink of beer." He finds a cup of beer and tries to give it to the girl. The girl doesn't want it, so he takes a drink, and he drinks a cup of semen. So then the running joke in the second one is he again another sexual thing. He's getting peed on now. So it's like a running joke because he does other stuff in the reunion and in wedding. So like he gets like the worst of it. Like in wedding, he eats dog shit. it's sort of like it's a running joke with Stifler.
But he never
Yeah.
learned, this character, right?
He doesn't. He doesn't.
No.
He never does learn. I will say by the time we get to the fourth movie, and I don't want to keep talking about it, he sort of learns in that one.
Okay.
But in
Okay.
this
He
one, he is
relinquishes.
still this one he is still that college meathead,
Yeah.
that college guy that still has a high school mentality.
He's what
You know?
Sean William Scott does best. He's the imbecile of the group.
Absolutely. And then you know what? That's Sean William Scott's like role, right? I mean, that's goon, role models. Like he's sort
Even
of
the rundown.
the
His
rundown.
movie with
Final
The Rock.
Destination. And
Final-
look,
yeah.
Sean William Scott, if we're just talking about performances, I mean, he is giving it 110%.
Oh, he's fantastic. I mean,
He's
even though he's
fantastic.
the same guy in every movie, he's kind of Stifler everywhere.
But he got typecast as Stifler,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And that's not a shadow I would like to be stuck in at all. If we can start talking negative now, this movie has a heart. But it's not like a pure heart. It's not like a heart that only like encompasses like, goodwill for mankind. You know what I mean? It's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of situation where like I do have some really like genuine endearment towards these characters, but then Stifler breaks into these women's apartments and he like starts like playing with their dildo and he hides in their closet. And then I mean, when he gets found out, does he have even a moment of shame or even just a moment of introspection? No, all he wants to do is try and get these two chicks to make out. So that's sort of where it falters for me is, God, where does this movie land on these characters? Are these characters funny because they're idiots, or is it funny because that's what all guys are like? Am I right, fellas? Right. So let's talk about that. Let's dissect it.
I think
how do you feel?
Stifler's like a bygone era in that sense, where you're absolutely right. It's he's a meathead. He's what he's what the class, and I wouldn't even say class clown would be back in the day. He's more like the clown asshole. The class asshole is basically what he is. And they said in the first movie, like they don't even like the guy, right? Because they said it in the first movie, like, why do we hang out with Stifler? And it's like, oh, because he has a lake house. So people hang out with him because he's being used because he has money, because he comes from money, because he has a lake house, because in this movie they even said like we can't afford this thing without inviting Stifler. And so that's why they brought him in. It's not like they like him, they love him. They know he does jackass things, but they have to sort of keep with him because he brings in the money to the group. So he's a guy that you just love to hate. I don't know if you guys, I mean, because obviously of the age difference, but like I know when I was in high school and in college, like there was guys that were like that. Like you had guys like me that was just like very respectful and did some stupid shit, but nothing as crazy as Stifler did. But then you did have guys that were like Stifler, total jocks, total meatheads, totally into just at that point disrespecting people, women. They didn't care.
Had rich parents.
Had rich parents.
I grew up. I hung out with
ingredient.
I hung out with a Stifler in high school. Yeah.
Right. And so
I knew of Stiflers, but I didn't hang out with them, I guess is the difference for me.
Right.
And like he said, they don't want to hang out with them.
Yeah, I hung out with a Stifler a couple times. Like I said, I was probably sometimes a Stifler at certain points. Not anymore. Shit changes, you change.
Yeah, I mean the scary idea is that we all have a Stifler lurking inside of us, right?
Stifler somewhere deep down, right?
I think as men, we are all sort of prone to like just not like indulge in our thought process, but I think we sometimes do think about like, hey, it's two girls, or I wonder, what they're up to. I don't know, maybe just as me, but I think as guys, we're not gonna protect society in that sense, where we're not gonna go out and break into two girls' house to see if they're lesbians. We're just like, oh, hey, look, there might be lesbians.
He's an extreme version of what the idea of like the worst perversions that men have. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's like the extreme. He's the personification of the worst side of what people think a man's brain would be.
I love the fact that we're basically having the same conversation that we had about Hollow Man, the movie about the
Yeah.
invisible rapist?
Yeah, we kind of are. Yeah, no, that's funny. I
Except
do.
this, except he's not invisible here,
Yeah,
Stifler.
except he's not invisible and
Okay,
he's
look,
actually saying these things out loud.
if this mofo were invisible, this becomes a horror movie
Yes.
instantly.
Oh yeah.
Like,
For sure.
like not even a build up. Like, I know the first thing he's doing if he's invisible.
Yeah.
So I do think that he does sort of intrude on the camaraderie that we were talking about, right? I mean, I know yet. Well, so Oz, Jason Biggs, fucking Weasley kid from Rookie of the Year, and
Paul.
who's the guy? Who's the dude with the really like weird deep voice who has a thing for Stifler's mom?
Paul
His name is
Finch.
Paul. Yeah, Paul Finch.
Paul Finch.
Yeah.
Like the four of them, they are the friends, and then you got Stifler kind of like wreaking havoc there. I feel like if you take Stifler out of the movie, like it actually becomes a lot less controversial. You could say he's the person who really brings in this element of everything that you could really have a problem with American Pie, I guess.
Yeah, because I feel like the comedy in this movie really is coming from Jason Biggs, Michelle, and then what you get like the outlandish comedy for that time frame is coming from Stifler.
Yeah.
Because Kevin's not that funny to me.
He's not a very funny character overall.
Oz really gets hidden. He's pining after his girlfriend in Paris. He doesn't have a big funny roles. Finch does the funny stuff with the tantric stuff, and when Stifler calls him a motherfucker, he's like, "Oh, yes, I did."
Yeah,
Which was like to me was hilarious. Like he has some key funny moments, but like I feel like most of the comedy is just coming from just Michelle, Jason, and Stifler.
Well, and I want to throw something in there too about my problem with Stifler in this movie because I knew what to expect from Stifler, so I wasn't really disappointed when that's exactly what I got. And some of it I did find funny, even though I think there was a lot of it that didn't really age too well. But my biggest problem with Stifler's character is that they had like the perfect arc for him, and they almost teased it at one point where he has that weird moment with Natasha Lyonne's character. Or I don't even know if that's not how her name's pronounced, but they have this like weird moment where like it looks like they're gonna get together. And what I thought was gonna happen, because the movie was already showing that these characters were learning from their mistakes and and moving forward with their the error of their ways. I thought he was gonna try to hook up with these lesbian chicks, and they were gonna give him a double nut kick, and he was gonna who was going to be there to help him except for Natasha's character, and he was going to realize like, okay, you know what, like maybe it's time for me to stop the shtick, maybe it's time for me to realize like this. But instead we sort of like get that realization from the Shermanator, who immediately goes back on it when that's what Nadia's into. So it's like that was for me the thing that disappointed me the most is like you have this amazing moment between these characters, right, where everybody's realized what they need to do, how they need to do it, and that they're all going to be fine and together in the end. Right. And then Stifler's just still Stifler, and he doesn't learn anything. And
right, but you got to remember also, I'm going to take you back to 2001, right? 1999, 2001, where when American Pie came out, Stifler was the breakout character. It wasn't Jim, it wasn't Michelle, it wasn't Oz, it wasn't even Shannon and Elizabeth. There was Stifler. There was Stifler everywhere. Stifler was a breakout character.
He was everywhere.
In 2001,
Stifler is iconic. Yeah,
right. And so I get what you guys are trying to do with his character, but back then they weren't trying to humanize him or give him a nice closed story. Was because they wanted him to be as outlandish as he can, because that was Stifler. They needed him to get peed on. He needed him to do, the whole lesbian stuff and just be the way that he was, because that's what America wanted at that time. That's what
America needed.
That's what America needed.
It's what America needed.
Right. That was a culture in 2001. That was 22 years ago.
Right. No, and it's weird to kind of see that. And I do want to ask you, other Gabe, if you had to bring up something that is sort of a detraction for you when you watch this. Obviously it's a movie you do love. You love the American Pie movies, and this is your favorite of them. There's got to be something in there that you're not too big of a fan of, or maybe you're mixed on. Would you like to introduce something?
Lack of nudity. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, could you imagine?
Honestly, honestly, I would have wanted Jim to get with Nadia at least once. That's the only thing that like listen,
Okay.
you're teasing this from the first one. She really likes him. Like, listen, I've never been a good looking guy until now, right? But back then I was a nerd, like the nerdiest of nerds, and I would have loved to like have him. And I know we've all agreed that Allison Hannigan is just
Right.
gorgeous, right? But
Yeah.
back then it was like before I grew up. Back then it was like, goddamn, Nadia was was fire,
I mean,
right? And like
yeah.
as a nerd, as a geek or whatever, it's like I would have wished that at least they would have given him a chance to like his comeuppance after the mishaps of the first one, just like at least once. Like it could have been like you have sex with her and realize, you know what, this doesn't feel right, and then go with Michelle, right? Instead of just saying, you know what, I know that you came all the way back from your home country. You've been traveling all over. Now that you're here, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go with another girl. Like, no, just like at least something. Give me
I
something.
want to ask you though, doesn't it sort of make up for it that the bigger nerd in the Shermanator ends up getting her?
No, because Shermanator is such a low low billing character.
He is. You're
also,
right.
the first movie, he was a douchebag in the first one.
He was, yes.
He made a story up that he had sex with this girl, and then
Jim has the biggest stakes for getting her, so it would have made sense to.
right. I mean,
I
so
see
it
what
was
you're
just
saying.
like, I don't know. At least maybe, I don't know, make out, maybe a little bit over clothes, cuddles, whatever may be. But there was no chance of that at all. I know it's just like the dumbest thing to like say that you don't
No,
like
I mean,
about
hey,
it, but
look, like this is how you feel about the movie, like that's
Yeah,
not a.
but that is sort of the question. Is this about vicarious living, or is this watching about characters grow, right? Because for his growth, I think it's much better for Jim to realize before he, gets this thing that he's been lusting after, what he actually needs, I think
right.
from a storytelling perspective, that really was the right choice. And that's something that impressed me about this movie. I actually didn't think it would
No,
even
and you're
have,
right. It is
you know,
the
the,
right. It is the right choice. As the writing made the right choice to go with it. As a person that when you watch these movies, you sort of want to immerse yourself, and you immerse yourself, and you
Right.
put yourself in like Jim's position, and you're just like, damn, he should at least got in, make out session with Nadia, something, and then just moved on from there. But which, like you said, they made the right choice though, and I agree.
Well, there's a lot to be said about that. Like at the end of the day, you want to. It speaks to how you feel about these movies because you want to be able to put yourself into the shoes of the character. And when something happens that makes you disconnect from the character in that way, it could be a big detraction from a movie. I mean, it's a big thing. You brought up our Hollow Man episode, and that's a big thing that prevented me from liking Kevin Bacon as much in that movie is because I thought his performance was incredible, but it's a character that I just could not relate to or get on the level of at any point in the film.
because he was the
And
villain.
well, right, he was the villain. I know that's the point. A lot of people talk about about liking him a lot in that movie, and you guys, even you and Cody,
Yeah.
talked about how much you appreciated him. And in this movie, like I would agree, I would lean more towards not that bad Gabe side, where I'd think like for me, if I was being more connected with the character, what they did was actually perfect for me, because I had been in a similar circumstance before, where there was a long time where I was like really going after somebody and trying to court somebody, and I had them for a while, and then I just sort of realized like this isn't what I want, man. Like this is I don't want this. And then I moved on from that, and now I'm much better off. And so and obviously that skipped a little bit. It wasn't just like straight from that to my wife, but it worked out better in my favor. So like that's
Right.
what connected me to the character. But if that's not what connects you to them, then not having those things are a detraction point. So it's
No, I
interesting that.
get it, but I would say, and I go back, I'm 2001, like 19 years
Right.
old, right? It's just like I was connecting at that age. As a
Exactly.
40-year-old man now, and you see it, and you're like, you're
Well,
right.
Yeah, I was
You're
gonna
like,
ask, how do you
yeah.
feel about that choice now?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. Yeah.
the
After
the
the fact.
choice
Good call, Gabe.
now. The choice now is he made the absolute choice. Like that's like the best choice he could have made, because it's that's his twin flame, as the young people call it now. It's a soulmate. So that was the right choice to go with. But back then, 2001, people were like, you should have picked Nadia. Like, now it's you watch and you're like, yeah, it's the best choice. Like you pine after somebody, like you said, you pine after somebody for so long, and then you realize, like, why? When I
Yeah.
have this perfect person that's all, like, completely compatible with me, like 95%, like,
Yeah.
and she likes me, like, why won't I just go
And she
after
looks like
that?
Allison Hannigan. Can
And
you stress that?
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
he
Yeah.
didn't pick the ugly duckling or anything.
No,
I mean,
No,
yeah.
right.
no. I think we've all could have, like we said, we all agree. Allison Hannigan is just, she's gorgeous.
And I like the fact that they don't even like try to trick you into thinking she's ugly, like a lot of movies do.
Right.
There's
No.
no glasses or like frumpy haircut they put on her.
Or
This
even,
isn't,
Yeah.
she's all that. I was about to say
Yeah.
she's all that.
Well, the other thing too is like some of these movies try to do it in a more subtle way where they do things in like the score, where they'll have like this like farty trumpet sound every time they come on the screen, and you're just like, that's not an ugly person. Why are you trying to make me think they're ugly? In this, they don't really do that, which I know we're not talking about the good stuff, but like, like there's a lot of scenes where they do make her seem like desirable.
We can
Yeah,
like,
right, exactly. There's a lot of scenes where they do
things
make her seem very ideal, which is like, I respect that in a weird way from a sex comedy. Like that's something that could have easily been like, oh, he's insane for not going for Nadia.
Right.
But they don't play it that way.
They don't. And also another thing I knock on is just the house. Like, I'm thinking, like, I can't, out of college, couldn't afford to rent a huge house on Lake Michigan for 2 or 3 months with just a couple of buddies. Like, that doesn't seem realistic enough for me. Plus all the booze and the parties and like the painting. Like, I work in construction. I know damn well that from like 8 in the morning, I don't have a set time to get off. So like from 8 in the morning to like my job is done. These guys are like partying and they're painting for a couple times, like, and they're making money. Like, that just, I couldn't relate at all to that. I was like, no.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because there is a total wish fulfillment side to this movie. And I don't know about the first one, but this one, I just gotta say this, there's not even a story and there's not even a hook. All that this movie has to offer in terms of narrative is that they are in this really cool beach house. It has as much story as The Mutilator. 1984's The Mutilator, the classic slasher set on a beach house. But whereas, that was about avoiding the bad man with the hook for a hand. Did he have a hook for a hand? Different discussion. This is about getting, Jason Biggs's dick ready for Nadia. Equally thin storylines. I'm not going to say that's necessarily a problem, because the story is just a framework for some gags and some good character moments. I get that, but they could have at least done something plausible, right? And just as you highlighted, I mean, if they're that loaded, then they have a lot more options in life than I did when I was in college.
Huh. Well, I will say this, like the story side, I see it more as like somebody getting ready for something they've been waiting for seemingly their whole life, while slowly realizing that it's not really what they want. So I see the story a little bit differently, but one thing that I don't see differently is the fact that this movie seems to exist in a different fucking universe with some of the stuff that they do. And that's one of them. Like I'm looking at the things that are happening, and it's funny because like when I watch an action movie or a sci-fi movie or even sometimes a horror movie, I can suspend my disbelief pretty far sometimes. But like to the point where Halloween 5 is a movie I enjoy. So that just gives you an idea. So is The New Blood. We covered both of those on this show. But when you watch this, it's like, this is not a movie you should have to suspend disbelief for. Maybe some of the over-the-top sex stuff, like it's a sex comedy. If you got to do something crazy with the sex stuff, like, okay, that's fine. But some of it just defied logic, and we've brought up some of those things so far. And this should not be a movie that's making you go, what? Like, you shouldn't
This should not be a movie with plot holes.
No, and that's one of the things. Like
normally you need you need a plot for plot holes, but not even for this movie. That's how deep it goes.
It just felt like there were some leaps in logic, and in a
Yeah.
movie like, you know, like one of the complaints that I was gonna have at some point was like, oh, there's a little bit too much sex stuff for my taste, but like, you know, you're getting an American Pie movie, you get what you expect. There's a lot of sex stuff in there. Even though it's not for me, I can't say I was disappointed in seeing it there because I knew what I was gonna get. But the leaps in logic are like, it's like this weird thing that comedies around that time did, like movies like I think of Eurotrip and Stealing Harvard, which is not really a sex comedy but is one that just like really went above and beyond to defy logic in certain parts, that it's just like it feels slightly lazy when
Mhm.
you put those beats in a movie that really are inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, it takes you out of it a little bit, and it's just unnecessary.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I said, it's hard to suspend disbelief because it's just like, okay, like, like it was said, I'm out of college, and first year out of college, I got no money. Like, how the hell am I going to afford a beach house?
Bro, especially
Yeah.
on Lake Michigan. I know you know
Especially on
about
that
that.
Michigan.
Yeah, and it's one of those, right? I mean, there are two things going on here that are diametrically opposed. You know, the idea that these guys are lovable losers and that they can afford all these luxuries in life that, the rest of us typically just fantasize about. It really didn't cause a problem for me in a huge way. It's like really more of a thing that, it's sort of like the thing in Friends. How do these, you know, regular folks that we can relate to, how can they afford that fucking apartment in goddamn Manhattan? Right?
Or Home Alone. Home Alone's another one. How in the hell can they afford this gigantic house in the suburbs of Chicago? That's
Drug dealing.
Yeah,
ridiculous. Yeah, drug dealing. Like
exactly.
yeah,
Big drug dealing.
but
Kevin McAllister is fucking uses the Pablo Escobar
yeah.
of Chicago.
But no, I mean, like, and I wanna throw it back to you, other Gabe, here to see. It doesn't sound like you have a lot of problems with this movie, which is just it just shows your connection to it. But is there anything else that you kind of wanted to bring up that you personally just don't really vibe with this movie? And if not, I'm gonna give our Gabe a chance to just see if he's got anything.
I think that I'm secure enough in my own like sexuality or masculinity to say that what I don't vibe with anymore, it's just like that sense of humor. Like, yeah, they're still nostalgic to me, but the whole homophobia thing that they had going on in most of these movies, like it doesn't vibe with me anymore because I do see, I have friends and I have, family members that have, come out, and it's just like, okay, like I don't know, I don't vibe with that aspect of this movie
Mm.
anymore, right? So like when he's like, oh, when he doesn't want to give, Stifler the blowjob, and I'm like, I get it why you don't want to get it, but like they took it as a joke and it went like for like a fear of being called gay. I'm like,
Right.
I don't vibe with that anymore. Back then, yeah, back then it was, you didn't like something, you were called that, you were, and it was supposed to be a derogatory term.
Right.
So like I don't mess with that anymore. And that's the only aspect of it that I don't mess with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally fair, and I think probably everybody involved in the making of the movie would admit that, right? I get the sense that it's not being mean spirited. It's
Right.
it was capitalizing on a sense of humor that was unfortunately very common and very popular at the time.
Yeah.
I think anybody who listens to an Eminem song
Yeah.
knows what it feels like to
Yep.
have to rectify that if you're a believer in LGBT.
Right.
Q plus rights. That's something that we're going to always have to talk about. Thankfully, it didn't cross that line into God. I have to shut this off. I feel wrong and I feel weird, watching this.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard because even now, I've made this clear. I'm a huge hip hop fan, and even in hip hop music currently, you still have that, like, oh, I'm more manlier than you, and you're whatever. But so it's sort of hard even nowadays to deal with that when you're such a big hip hop fan, and you still hear it in song lyrics and stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I think when you look back at a movie like this, it's hard because it's hard to watch a movie from a different time with modern
Mm.
sensibilities. It's like, going back and watching a Mel Brooks film and just being like, wow, this guy's like the worst person ever. But it's the humor. I mean, and
Right.
it's done in. I think Mel Brooks, by the way, is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I think he does it in a tasteless yet tasteful way. Like, I don't think much of his stuff does not bother me. I don't think it doesn't age too well. Was there anything else you wanted to highlight before we kind of tackled some of the audience's big problems with this movie?
No, I
Or
think we're ready to go to the ugly section. I mean, come on, this movie has that sort of a legacy where people have been criticizing American Pie. People have been talking about the problems, how it hasn't aged well. Many of the points that we've touched on, I'm sure, are going to come up in the reviews, the critical reviews of this movie. So I think we're ready to launch into that and tackle it. I mean, I'm interested to see what comes up.
Let's hear them.
yeah, well, let me. I tried to make this a balance of things that were specific to the franchise and things that were specific to the genre, so that we sort of had a glimpse into both. One of them we just got done tackling, which was the tasteless jokes that have not aged well. I think that's something that could be talked to, it could be about to death, honestly, and it's something that everybody has a different perspective on. I think we've all really given ours. So I want to throw into something that's very franchise specific. Um, a lot of people said that this movie had less of what they liked about the first American Pie, and more of the things they didn't like about the first
Mm.
American Pie. Now, this is a conversation that unfortunately disqualifies my co-host.
Okay, well, I'll see you guys later.
See ya. But I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to ask you, as somebody, other Gabe, as somebody who has this as their favorite in a franchise that they enjoy and revisit frequently. Do you think that any part of this criticism sort of holds up, or do you think that it's the opposite effect for you, where this has more of what you like about the first one?
I think this. I think what I love more about this one than the first one is that this one actually, like we've talked about, it has more heart to it.
Right.
Um, what? So like what I love about the first one is Jim and Jim's dad's relationship, and I get it more in this, right? Um, I find that the jokes land a lot better in this,
Mhm.
like the opening sequence where it's like, oh, I didn't get your daughter's name, but hopefully my son did.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
like that
Yeah.
was like, it opens up with that joke, and it was like hilarious. The first one just feels like they're all hanging out and they're just trying to have sex, which I get, that's all what all high school kids try to do. But this one just had more heart, and it added that element to it where I just thought, like, yeah, it's just better than the first one. And that's what I love about it. Which I love about any movie is, give me a little bit of heart.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. What one thing that I will say is that I think the audience is valid in saying that it has a little bit less of what people I think really did take about the first movie to love, but they make up for that with the heart that this movie has that I don't think the first film does have. You get a sense of feeling for these characters that you really didn't get in the first one, other than embarrassment or encouragement for them.
Right.
Whereas in this one, you sort of feel very good about the fact that, like, we're at the scene at the party and like everybody's kind of going their own way, but they're doing it together, and it has that sense of heart that I don't think the first one has. So I do think that they are valid in saying that it has less of the things that people really did take to the first film to enjoy.
Yeah.
I think they made up for that, and I do disagree with the fact that it has more of the things that people don't like. I think it has just an equal amount, if not a little bit less, of what people don't like about these movies, which is the super raunchy stuff that doesn't age very well. There's less in this movie that I cringe at rewatching it, than the first film, because a lot of that is replaced with things that give it heart. Yeah, I think you and I are really on the same page here, and I wanna bring something up that'll loop my co-host back in here, and it's something that I think is really interesting to complain about movies like this. It's an interesting complaint, and it's why I didn't want to bring it up in my bad section, but I saw a lot of reviews that complained about how much embarrassing sex stuff was included and how it was treated. A lot of people talk about how the fact that like sex should not be taboo and awkward, but this movie makes it that. I do think that this is a lot of modern eyes watching the movie, but I think that
Wow.
that's an important question to have, and I'm curious if my co-host has anything to say about that point.
Have those people ever had sex before?
I don't know. And see, that's the thing.
uh,
Like, I think what they are trying to say is that the awkward stuff in this movie is portrayed as a joke, as opposed to something that I guess is something they think should be taken more seriously. I read it in like 10 reviews. I was like, am I missing something here? Like,
okay.
it's a comedy.
The Virgin Letterboxd reviewers, meet the Chad Gabe.
Yeah. Oh my
No, but
god.
for real, I mean, God, no, that's actually one of the most charming and relatable things about the film, probably. I look, I actually think that this does the opposite of make sex a taboo. I think it normalizes it. I think a lot of people felt refreshed to see, these experiences being portrayed and not in a way that, is trying to shame people. I didn't think anybody was being shamed for engaging in these activities. Yeah, it can be embarrassing. People get embarrassed. awkward 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 things can take place. Shenanigans can take place. I'm not anti shenanigan in my teen sex comedy. No, I think that's kind of like a really invalid take on this movie. I mean, if that's just not something you want to see in your movies, if that's not
Right.
something you want to see in your comedies, American Pie probably isn't for you. I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
I would say so.
it's just one of those things, the filmmakers, the people involved are making a movie about not just any coming of age, a sexual coming of age, that part in a young person's life. And I think it'd just be dishonest to not acknowledge the awkwardness of it. And there's a lot of comedic mileage to get out of it. As long as you're not shaming people or being mean spirited, I really don't see what the problem is. There's not even nudity, which I was surprised
Right.
by. I know there is in that first one because of the famous scene with Shannon and Elizabeth, but this
Right.
one, no.
And that's the thing that I think was really important for me to make sure that we covered too, is that this is a comedy movie and it's a sex comedy on top of that. It's a movie that makes fun of that topic and plays on those values that you talk about. I mean, it's not treated as taboo so much as it's making fun of the fact that it's
Right.
taboo.
Mhm.
And it just feels like some of those jokes are not in on the joke of the movie, or some of those reviews rather are not in on the joke of the movie. But one thing that I think is something that I saw even more commonly in the reviews was talking about the fact that they felt like this movie had no soul and had no heart to it. That's something that I saw very commonly, that this was just a soulless rehash of the first movie. It did not do anything interesting with the characters. It didn't do anything interesting with the material. It just felt like they were like, how can we make a second version of the first movie? And even though you can't comment on this fully, Gabe, I am curious if you have a thought on people thinking that this movie has no soul to it, has no heart, has no there's no other synonyms I can think of,
One
so
of
I'm just
the
going to toss
things
it to you.
one of the first things that I commended the movie on is that it actually found not a heart so much like thematically, like, oh, this is a movie about what it's like to da da da.
It has
But
a heartbeat.
it has a heartbeat, and specifically these characters have journeys that I think a lot of people could get something out of. I think a lot of people can either relate or possibly even learn from. Maybe some young horny teenager did learn something from seeing Jason Biggs pick Michelle over Nadia, right? At the
Right.
very least, I think these characters, for the most part, have arcs that do make this movie add up to more than the sum of its parts. Like, I don't know how much the individual parts are great, especially on paper, but I will give the actors a lot of credit. Their chemistry with each other and the naturalism they each bring to their own character. Like, I loved Oz. I know I didn't highlight him, but I actually really appreciated his story. I'm actually in a long distance relationship now, technically, with my fiance. So that actually did hit close to home for me.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of little touches there. Like, it's less about teaching you a lesson than it is about evoking what it's like to be at this age. Both the confusion and the really great great things that you can discover about yourself and about the world around you. I don't know. I'm doing more legwork than the movie here, but if you pressed me, I could tell you things that I really did like about these characters.
It's just it's just so much. I feel like there's so much more to this movie than people give it credit for, in that sense where it's about finding yourself.
Yeah.
But this is what I feel
Yeah.
like these movies are. Like, in every stage of life, you got to find yourself. Like, I'm not the same Gabe that I was in high school, that was in college, that was in whatever phase I am. And in each phase, you try to find yourself. Like, I'm sure I'm coming up into my 40s. I'm sure I'm going to try to find myself in a new stage of life, right? And I got to find myself. I feel like these movies, and especially this one, it's like finding yourself amongst, like, your place in society, in a sense. Like, what's your place in society? What's your place among your friend group? And how are you going to grow from that? You know?
Yeah. Now, look, I have to reel back also and say I don't think this movie has so much hidden depth that it's
No, you were right the
a
first time.
misunderstood classic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's no Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Did you think I would forget that? Hell no. Hell no. Never again. We made that mistake once, and it's not happening again.
Paid for that one. No,
Yeah.
but no, like I want to say too, like it it has more heart than I think any movie in the sex comedy genre really is expected to have. You know what I mean? Like these movies, I think anybody who goes into these expecting a Citizen Kane level story, or just like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 level of character drama, you're not gonna get that. But what you are gonna get is a surprising amount of real lessons that you can take away from this. Not in a way of like it's preaching to you, or not even in a way where it's kind of trying to teach you these lessons,
Right.
but in a way where it's telling the story of these characters coming into their own and realizing the things that they really want out of life. And it's an important thing, and I think it's almost perfect in that way of being in a situation like other Gabe has here, where he did grow up with these movies. It's like, let's show these guys in every phase of their life so that we can we can show the progression of the natural progression of a male growing up in Michigan.
Well,
Right.
now we know where Richard Linklater got the idea for Boyhood. So I'm a little suspect now.
Listen,
Oh,
this
Jesus.
this movie franchise, and in general, I'll just be general here with this, right? I feel like it inspired so many other movies, sex comedies that can be, after it, like Super Bad, right? Teenage
Right.
sex comedy, right? You have Old School with like older,
Old school. It's a good one too.
Old School. It's like this franchise started it all because the sex comedy by like the 90s had fallen by the wayside. And what we had in the 80s were, you know, John Hughes movies that were more like comedy, like dramedies, but it was like with not a lot of sex in them. And also, an American Pie comes in the late 90s and just ushers in a whole wave of, different type of sex comedies that inspired a whole bunch of other directors and screenwriters.
I think we've really penetrated this. I think it's now ready to
Son
come
of
to
a
a
bitch.
climax. Oh, so you like when American Pie does this kind of humor, but me, I'm not allowed. You're censoring me. Okay, let's
As you said in
go
another
final verdicts.
episode, as you said in another episode, if you don't want controversy, don't come to the king. That's an exact quote. That will
The
be on a
Chad
t-shirt.
Gabe. I'm
That
I'm just
that
I live up to the name.
that will be on a t-shirt, ladies and gentlemen. But we're done with our
Cool.
unsanctioned
I can't wait for
buffoonery.
your guys' t-shirts.
Yeah,
We
we're
have a
done
couple
with.
of good T-shirts in the
We got a couple
works.
of good
Not gonna
ones
lie.
coming, but we don't know when we're releasing them. And that being said, the unsanctioned buffoonery that was this episode has come to a close, and it's time to cover our final verdicts. And for anybody who's new to the show, or to our guests, which I think we had the same system back then, but anyways, we have 4 potential ratings that a film can have on this show. I know it's called Not That Bad, but sometimes films escalate. So it can be either that bad, not that bad, actually good, or actually great. It'll be interesting to see where we all fall, coming from different perspectives of the film. But I want to start with our guest. This is a movie we know that you love, but I'm curious to see where it lands for you. So let's hear your final thoughts on the film and give it a rating on our scale if you could.
Just a quick sentence here, because it's any film that introduces into the American vocabulary the term MILF is actually great.
Yes.
Okay.
That may be the best final verdict we've ever had on this show. I like that. I like that. I like that. That's good. Very concise too. Was there anything else you wanted to add, or was that?
No, that was it.
Okay.
I had like planned that one out from like.
What else can you say?
Yeah, what else can you say after that? It's like a mic drop.
I don't know what
moment.
else I'm going to say. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
Is there something that you can add to that?
Well,
Look,
let's find out. Go ahead.
My letterboxd review for this movie is that Jason Biggs' face wasn't as punchable as I was expecting.
Oh
That's sort of my feeling about this movie as a whole. It's not as cringy as I was expecting. It's not as tasteless or homophobic. It's a little smarter. It's a little funnier. It's basically just a little bit better than I was expecting, especially given that this is considered inferior to the first movie. Again, I can't judge it to that film, but I can say that I laughed more than I expected, and I rooted for some folks. There were some happy endings involved in more ways than one. Yeah.
In the Robert Kraft kind of way, or in like the actual like
we're not even touching that. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of a perfect for our show. If I had grown up with this movie, I would have a real fondness for it. I'm a little too old. I mean, I just turned 25. I feel like I'm too old for a lot of things now. But as it was,
you're a little too old to grow up with American Pie at this point.
Yeah. But as it stands, watching this movie as somebody who's now a quarter of a century old, I really felt it was not that bad.
Interesting. It'll be interesting then, because I'm gonna agree with both of you at certain parts here. I think that this movie does have a sprinkle of all the things that you'd expect on the bad side from this, but it's got way more good than I had any idea would be present in this. Even having seen the film before, watching it back this time was a real eye-opener for me. Not in the same way that The Girl Next Door was. I think that was like an experience that I just really was not expecting. This one, I know American Pie enough to know what was going to come from this. But I didn't expect myself to be so invested in everything involving Jim and Michelle. I did not expect myself to have a smile ear to ear during that scene where he shows up at her concert. I did not expect myself to be so... really like to relate so heavily to the ending of the party and to love that scene so much. Like that's a scene I can genuinely say that I loved in this movie. The good overall definitely outweighs the bad in this. I think it is the best of the American Pie movies, and anybody can come at me for that. I don't care. This is the best of them. It's much better than the first one in my opinion, and I'm going to give this an actually good. I think I can't get it to that great level. I think there are things that I was missing about it, and ultimately sex comedies just really aren't for me. So when things are over the top and they are so focused on the sexual aspect of a movie, it's just not something that I'm super into. But for a movie that I'm not into, it sure as hell does a good job of making me think that I am. So yeah, actually good is where I'm going to fall on this one. And yeah, we sort of have a perfect triad here. We have actually great, actually good, and not that bad. Yeah, that I mean, couldn't have scripted a better ending. So I want to thank you again, Mr. Tornero, other Gabe, for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you guys for having me on.
It's been a thrill talking with you again. If anybody wants to go back and watch our first episode, watch us talk for over 2 hours about an incredibly long movie in Battle of Los Angeles. Watch Gabe's hometown get destroyed. Yeah, I want to thank you again.
It can't be a now hometown.
It's your new hometown, LA, Gabe. Sorry,
I don't think
Gabe.
that's how that works either. It is the city that I currently live in.
There you go.
I guess there's not a nifty name for that.
I think you got to be there for like 2 or 3 years before it's your hometown.
Yeah, before it's your new home.
Right. Then
Before you
In
can claim
LA, you
it.
actually have to have at some point lived in a tent on the sidewalk
Yeah,
or
that's
done crack cocaine in a public space before you can call it your hometown.
that's very fair. Or an 8 ball in the
Yeah.
bathroom of a
I'll be
club.
there one day. I'll be there one
Yeah,
day.
you'll get there.
Yeah.
Especially the 8 ball part. I think that's coming in your future, bud. But
Yeah. But I
just
do.
start off your OnlyFans so you get that money.
yes, start up the OnlyFans. Oh man.
I do have to
Well,
thank Gabe here for not just being a wonderful guest and giving us a great discussion. It was a really great time, but also picking a movie that was better than Battle LA because that was one bit of trepidation I had.
oh
Like,
my
do you want to
god.
invite Gabe? I was like, can you ask him what the movie is first? Okay, I think I can handle American Pie too.
Oh,
It
No,
was
my
gonna
God.
be, I forgot, it was gonna be some other movie, and then I was like, you know what? Let's do American Pie too.
I think
Well,
it was the
hey.
right call. I think it was the
Yeah.
right call. This was and we got to have a sort of a continuation of the discussion we had with Tony. You guys are horny on Maine over at Flopbuster. So thanks for bringing some of that energy over to us. We
And
really
you wouldn't
need
want to
sex and
read
stuff.
our text messages.
Yeah.
It's just bad news.
Well, what was it? The Sugar
Oh,
Shack.
God.
I want to thank the Sugar
The
Shack
Sugar
for
Shack.
The Sugar Shack.
for sponsoring.
We don't
sponsoring
discriminate,
this
right?
episode, because we
It's-
don't. If you're in the Chicagoland, Wisconsin area,
Right.
locate the Sugar Shack.
It's up in Lake Geneva. The
There we
top
go.
floor is where the male dancers are, and the bottom floor is the female dancers. You get the best of both worlds.
Oh, well, before this episode implodes, I'd like to ask you, what's coming up from you guys at Flopbuster, and is there anything coming up with your podcasts?
The headliner, we haven't been able to do it because of our schedules. We're missing our fourth entry into the Brendan Fraser filmography, which is The Whale, which we want to talk about The Whale. So hopefully we'll get that out there soon. But I think Tony's on vacation, but every Friday besides this Friday, we're going live, on YouTube on our channel. So besides that, I got all my stuff. Like, I watch every new release on Thursdays, and then I film them on my TikTok. Yeah, on TikTok, and I post those on everywhere. Everywhere that I have social media, I post stuff. So
Yeah, and I want to say to everybody, like, if somehow you have not gone over to Flopbuster yet, go over there, watch their live streams. It's a super fun hangout. You'll probably see either Gabe or myself or both of us on the show at some point in time. I was just on there on your last stream. Had a ton of fun, which is where the Sugar Shack conversation comes up.
We turned Connor red from the whole Sugar Shack. Like, he beat red. He's like, I felt like he's like, damn, what did I get myself into?
Oh no! Look, hey, here's the thing, man. I've been a proud supporter of Flopbuster from the beginning, and I've been at as many live streams as I can. I knew exactly what to expect. I didn't know how fast it would get there, but as a married man, let's just say that was the reason my face was red. But no, I have a ton of fun every time I watch you guys. Have even more fun when I get to come on the show. I know my co-host feels the same way. We love coming and talking with you guys.
And I have even more fun when you guys embarrass Connor.
And yeah, you have even more fun when I get red in the face. But yes, you can find Flopbuster everywhere. We're going to put their links in the description below for this
thank
episode.
you so
much. But you can also find us in some places too. We got some places you can come and find us on YouTube and all your favorite podcasting platforms, as well as social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Not That Bad Pod, and Twitter at Not That Bad. M as in movie, P as in podcast. In addition to our new website, notthatbadpod.com, we also have a Patreon. Gabe, our Gabe, why don't you tell us about our, it would be interesting to have other Gabe try to tell us about our Patreon, but I'm going to have you do it, to tell them what they get from subscribing.
So many things to plug. Oh my God, we're not even done plugging. We've been
I know,
plugging
isn't
away.
this amazing?
Okay, yeah. Listen, if you just sign up for our Patreon, then we won't have to keep plugging it. So just hop over, notthatbad.com, well, patreon.com/notthatbad.
There we
go. How thoroughly I've rehearsed this little sales pitch I'm going to give you.
We prepare nothing for these episodes.
If you sign up at any tier, then you will have access to all of our Not That Bad specials. Because if you think that we are dropping some hot takes right now, Man, I mean, we defend the Super Mario Brothers movie. There's a whole, database of embarrassing shit that we have said behind that paywall.
Let's wrap this up now. I want to thank you again for coming on the show today, Mr. Tornero. And Mr. Tice, why don't you take us out?
Of course. Well, this has been one of two Gabes. This is my co-host, Connor. And finally, we are not that bad, signing out.